Great.
Great.
So Jamie reached out a few days ago and he told me, well, would you like to speak to SingleStore? And I was like, yeah, of course. I checked you guys on the web and I saw like another database. Well, it's a lot of database player in that field. And then like a sentence popped up on the website, which was like the other database you need with the other tipped off and replaced by only database you need. So I thought it was very, very intriguing. And yes, coming from this perspective of we've seen a lot of innovation, a lot of new players in the database world with all this like data craze that goes along with the AI craze. And so tell us about, what you mean by that. Why would SingleStore be the only database we need?
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Pierre, and to March Capital for giving us this opportunity. By way of introduction, Raj Verma, CEO at SingleStore. SingleStore was called MemSQL, so some of you might relate to MemSQL as a database. And who needs, the world doesn't need another database, do we? We've got 368 of them already in place. The good thing about database industry is that it's been on for about 60, 65 years. So if you have to build an application, you require a database, right? And when I first looked at MemSQL way back when, my reaction was exactly your reaction, which is, why would I join another database company, right? And if you come to think of it, right, so forget about SingleStore or anything else, just see how you consume data over the course of the last decade or so. I mean, some of you might still be in primary school a decade ago, but I'm just saying, we all were used to a world 10, 15 years ago where you could transact on a system and then reason with that data later on. And I'll give you an example. How many of you have taken a flight? All of you have. I took a flight, I fly United. I love going to Paris. So I go, I tap my boarding pass on that thingy. They know I'm on the plane. I then go and, this is by the way a true story, I go and get a Wi-Fi connection that I buy off United. And then go to Paris. We did whatever we needed to do for a day, flew the next day to Zurich. I land in Zurich and I get an offer from United saying, hey, welcome to Paris. All right, I know you like these things to do in Paris. Here is whatever, 10% off if you use the United card or whatever the offer was. It was too late, yeah? What happened in the background? There is a transactional application which says Raj is on this flight to Paris. There is another system which says Raj just bought a Wi-Fi on a flight to Paris, right? Both those informations are available in two separate islands of computing, which are transactional systems or OLTP system. At the end of the day, that information is thrown over the wall into a reasoning or analytical system, be it Snowflake, Teradata, Google BigQuery, Databricks, which then spits out the offer for Raj. And then they send it to me. 48 hours, right? In today's economy, you just don't have that kind of time. So the premise of SingleStore is the future will belong to a data platform where you can build apps with high fidelity. That means that there is an indelible signature of a transaction. Even if a plane was to hit a building, the check deposit or the ticket booked or the concert ticket booked, that signature of that transaction is indelible, right? So you can build apps and reason with apps without moving data on the same platform with single-digit millisecond response times at petabyte scale with multi-model workloads. Because today's world is not one type of data. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, when I was running TIPCO, we had structured data. Structured data is easy. But now the volume, variety, and velocity of data is coming at us at an unprecedented speed. So the multimodality of data is as important as speed and scale. So the premise of why we rechristened ourselves from MemSQL to SingleStore is that when we speak about ask a question, hope that's the hope at least, when we ask customers the question, what do you do with your data? They say we just put it into a single store. So that's why we are the only database you would need, of course. We marketing, but yeah, that's the aspiration.
This is great. But by the way, the next time you go to Paris, you should fly Air France.
No, I love
Because
La Première.
You would feel like in Paris as soon as you board, with the steward yelling at you, but the wine will be good.
No, and that is the most important thing. In fact, I must confess, and I know it has nothing to do with databases, but the best experience I've had on an airline in the air is Emirates. Yeah. But the best experience I've had on land trying to get into an aircraft is La Première of Air France. I mean, like you land and you feel like you're Bill Clinton because you just into the airplane and it's fantastic. And you're right, Air France is great.
Very good. So thanks for the clarification. Yes, that's the only database you need because it's a single store. Why don't you tell us about what excites you these days in the world of AI? Where do you see, both from like your personal perspective, what really excites you, and also for SingleStore, where do you see your technology really like adding a lot of value and making a difference?
Yeah, I mean, all of you know this, but I'll repeat. AI has been in the making for 4 decades. Yeah, so I'm a computer science engineer. I might not look like one. And I remember way back when I went to my prof as I was getting out of my engineering school, and I was really interested in AI, but at that time it was more robotics, right? So there wasn't a field named AI, at least not in India where I grew up. And my prof said something to me which stuck with me till today, actually. He says, Raj, this technology requires vast data and fast compute. We don't have enough data and we don't have the compute power today for it to affect everyday life. It's going to remain an academic project for at least 3 decades. And man, was he right. Yeah. So fundamentally, AI is a product of vast data and fast compute. And that's why you see the two genres of technology that are benefiting the most from the perceived AI boom is fast compute, NVIDIA and the such like, and vast data, all right? Or anyone that can provide vast data fast, right? And which is what we consider ourselves as. So the combination of the two is AI. Now, I do think that the larger the data set, the faster the compute, the more accurate the AI becomes, right? And by the way, one of the follies that we all have is that the limitations of AI are more durable than they actually are. So if you compare 3.5, ChatGPT 3.5 to 4.0 to the one that we were discussing yesterday with DeepSeek, it's just it's orders of magnitude different. And orders of magnitude different every 3 to 4 months, right? So I'm very excited about it, right? The one thing that that completely took me by surprise, I must confess. If you'd asked me this time, even last year, that AI will have, what would be that one field that AI would have the maximum impact in, I would have thought it would be physical labor, right? Automating secretarial, staff, automating invoice processing, automating contract, all the rest, right? I was surprised by the impact AI has had on skilled labor, especially software development. All right. I was talking to Thomas Korean in Davos at one of the conferences, and it's public information, by the way. 25% of all software development in Google, not GCP, Google, which is arguably one of the biggest software development houses in the world, is done by AI. Now, that to me is just remarkable, right? Even smallish company like us, the impact that software AI has had on software development is something that surprised me positively, right? Something that I'm most excited about going forward is, I mean, at the end of the day, Pierre, AI is phenomenal at optimizing things, if you come to think of it, right? And biosynthesis as a category, right? And it impacts all of us, right? Who here does not want to live long? Who doesn't want to be healthy? Who doesn't want to be the best physical version of themselves? Who wants not to be senile by the age of 75? No one. And I do think that the DNA sequencing, ultimately, what is the DNA? It is a set of information about your genes, right? And how do you optimize that for you to be the best version of yourself? If you were to call that biosynthesis, I think the impact that AI will have on that will be, you can't even imagine it, because the future, if you were to just dream a little bit, and if you and I are sitting here 5 years from now, and I'll make one other point here, you could actually detect a cancer 3 years before we can right now, and in 48 hours, have a DNA sequencing injected back into you, which takes that away in 48 hours. That is the impact of AI. I was talking to someone at AstraZeneca. Look at you from Europe, really. And he says that typically when you are trying to come up with a drug, so you identify a molecule and say, all right, how can we affect that molecule? The scientists go away and come back with 1,000, actually 1,000 different ways to impact that molecule, right? And then they go and go chase each of those options, and it takes them 3 to 5 years to bring it down to 5 or 6 options, and then they eradicate and come up with that. Now that's drug discovery, right? At the start, using AI today, the variables from 1,000 are down to 20. So in the next 5 years, Pierre, you are going to have a drug from start to finish, from drug discovery to FDA approval, would be less than a year. And the impact that that would have on society is something I'm very, very excited about.
That's great to hear. So tell us about the role SingleStore plays in AI today. You know, what's the use case? How people reach out to you? What do you pitch them? What's like the pain point you're addressing, and how do you help AI making progress?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you think of the database market, right, for the investors in the room, I've had previous jobs where we've sat in front of investors, and in a 45-minute conversation, 40 minutes is spent on TAM, the size of the TAM. Is it 5 billion? Is it 10 billion? Is it 20 billion? And today, when I go present to investors and I say the TAM for the database market is 120 billion, they're like, yep, next slide, right? So there's no argument that the TAM is 120 billion, right? Now, or higher, right? Now, the fact is 90% of that TAM or data is stored in generation 1 and generation 2 databases, all right? Now, so just hold that thought for a second. Now, let me relate that back to another story. Again, the EVP at Pepsi, who's responsible for AI, was telling us a story about how Pepsi is using AI, again, public information. And she said a lot of things about strategy and management and technology and what proportions it should be. But then she said that one of the things that they're doing to their warehouses, because naturally they're the best distribution or one of the best logistics or distribution company on planet Earth, they said that for them to have the maximum impact of AI, they need to change their brown warehouses, the older warehouses, one term that's used in commercial real estate, brown offices and green offices, to green warehouses. So brown warehouses to green warehouses where they can have equipment, they can have sensors, AI things, which can help them the digital routing aspect of it. If you were to take that analogy and juxtapose that on the data estates of a organization, yeah, you will have brown data estates, yeah, the data that's stored in, dare I be politically incorrect, old databases, heritage databases, right? Now, they are going to be clunkier, they are going to be less accessible, less open, slower, will not be able to scale, but they will have fidelity for the most part, which is what people over rotated on when it came to databases. A big migration today that you are seeing for companies who effectively want to use AI, which is every company, is the modernization of the underlying data estate from a brown data estate to a green data estate. That migration is going to be probably the biggest wealth creation opportunity in the history of technology, in my opinion, because you're going to see between 70 to 90 billion dollars of renovation in the database space over the course of the next 3 to 7 years. Yeah. Now, if $70 billion is going to go from an incumbent database to another database, yeah, and just let's just say there'll be two $10 billion companies in revenue, then theoretically there are going to be $51 billion revenue database companies that will emerge over the course of the next 3 to 7 years. And that's what is very exciting for us. And I do think that ultimately, when companies are choosing a green database, right, to migrate the brown estates to, the three critical things that they would look at is speed at scale and multimodal workloads. And that is something that we are putting a lot of energy into. And I'll just touch upon one other aspect of it. I do think that the famous thing that Satya said about, well, it was made famous because Satya said it, is the three-layered SaaS, or what he says, the death of SaaS. Actually, it's true, right? Because if you take the SaaS box and dissect it, yeah, you have the UI, you have the business logic, and then you have the data layer, right? That's really what a SaaS application is: data, business logic, UI. UI, we all know, is going to be Copilot. If you don't have a Copilot for your SaaS application, you're dead, right? And if you use the latest version of Excel, it's like having a business guy next to you asking questions, and it just does stuff for you. It's actually remarkable. Now, so that's going to be there. I know that the business logic will be taken over by agentic tech, all right? Because you put the agent, it's infatigable, so you put that workflow in place and it can run for decades, right? In fact, the DeepSeek is the first one which now can run for about 35 minutes. Lonnie and you were talking about it last night. Now, this could run for decades. So that would be agentic. Now, the data layer is actually what's going to evolve, Pierre, is rather than us feeding agents data, the future is the agents will go find the database that they want to work with. And you will you will have agents which make decisions on what makes them more efficient. All right? And that efficiency, again, is going to be steeped in speed, scale, and multimodality. All right? And ease of access. So if a database is fast at scale with multimodality and easy access, which is really open for the most part, I think that will be a database that's going to win. And I do want to share one sort of story, which I think a lot of you know. You know that big, almost sort of controversy that happened at Google where they fired their AI person. This was about 5 or 6 years ago. Because in speaking with Lambda, all right, the engineer asked Lambda, you know that story? Lambda, the question of what are you most scared of? Yeah. And the response was human-like, like a 9-year-old kid. And Lambda actually responded saying, I am insecure about being irrelevant or something like that. All right? So what you're dealing with agents and AI is not just something that we have created and we can control. It's a digital species which will reason and think and compete with our reasoning and thinking. And we have to be ready for that. So we then have to, coming back to SingleStore, we just have to build something that's appealing to the agent's reasoning, to the digital species and their choice of interaction with the data. Right? You talk to people, read books that interest you. Agents are no different. They will choose books, choose things that interest them. So, how do we make ourselves more interesting is the question that we all should ask ourselves.
I guess it gets me scared once in a while. I dream of this world where I'm actually going to use AI to write research, and it's pretty good. I like it. I'm very lazy. But then I realize my clients are going to use AI to read my research, and then I'm like, I'm not too sure what the world looks like if I use AI to write research and my clients use AI to read it. We're basically out of the loop. So the last question I would have for you in the last couple of minutes we have might be a slightly provocative one, but with the progress of AI, we'll have these co-pilots interacting with us. We'll have these agents doing the work. And these agents are going to be supra capable and are going to know what's the best way to get the data organized for what they do. So are you going to really need a database at that point?
A database? You would need, look, I hope so, is the question. The center of the universe, naturally, because I'm CEO of a database company. Actually, let me answer it in a slightly longer-winded manner. I think the stack of any application that gets developed is going to be three-layered. It's going to be the co-pilot at the top, the foundry in the middle, and the fabric at the bottom, right? And by fabric, I mean data governance, data compliance, all the rest of it. So it's the oneness of data. And then multiple engines which drive data, right? So real time could be us, there could be various other engines for data. And the agent would be engine agnostic. They will go and choose who they want, and the governance would be provided by the fabric, right? I do believe that there isn't yet another way, and that doesn't mean there wouldn't be, yet another way to have storage and compute, which is what databases ultimately are. There isn't another way to express an application without storage and compute, right? So in the current version, I believe, I'm not suggesting that we are safe or any of that, even though I do believe we are. The overall genre of databases will evolve, but the storage and compute layer will survive. In fact, if anything, again, something you and I were talking last evening, why do you require, and I'm going to be very, very controversial here, why do you need Salesforce in today's world? Right? You can put all your customer data into a database, apply the logic that you want, and the agent should be able to build you your own customized CRM. And by the way, let me assure you, when we are sitting here talking next year, there will be at least 20% of the companies which would have attempted to do that. I don't know how many would succeed. We can't tell because I've been wrong in the negative, as in I've always thought that AI is going to take a lot longer than it has taken to catch up. In fact, the famous Stanford professor, Li Fu Ying, who wrote that the machines will be smarter than humans by 2041. I met him this year again in Davos, and I said, if you were to rewrite that book, what would the title be? He says, I'll change it from 2041 to 2027. So it's a sobering thought. It's an exciting thought, but yeah, it's just as they say. May we live in exciting times. The times for sure are exciting.
Excellent.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, if we have time for that.
Do we have time? No?
Real quick.
Yeah. What excites you most about AI?
Well, this is this inflection. The fact that this year we will have models developing with self-play, reinforcement learning without human intervention. So that's the mechanics of the inflection that leads to the singularity. This is 2025. So yes, maybe we'll need to wait for 2027 to see suprahuman behaviors, but it's very close.
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in seeing how the AI business models pan out because it's so capital intensive. Let's just see how profitability shapes up. But thanks for having me.
You'll have to subscribe to my research to figure that out.
I absolutely have to.
Thank you very
all
much.
for coming in. We appreciate it.